So, John, a welcome announcement today from the Prime Minister that the federal government is going to provide Fortem some much needed funding to continue supporting first responders across Australia. You must be delighted.
Yeah, very happy. This is going to mean so much to our first responders and their families, and really wonderful that the Prime Minister and the Minister for Emergency Management, Murray Watt, announced this today. This is funding that was committed in the budget for 2022 March, and just wonderful that we're now able to get on with continuing to deliver for those first responders who we have supported and supporting more, especially when we're in a situation where we have numerous floods, we've had fires, we've had drought, we've had COVID, and our first responders just need our mental health support, our support around social connection, and our support potentially around transition and re-employment.
There's obviously been a big demand for that sort of support, wait lists for Fortem going forward because of the demand from first responders across the country. What's this funding going to allow Fortem to do to sort of address that wait list?
Look, it allows us to make sure that first responders understand that we are there for them and we can continue to support them. And for those who have joined our wait list, we'll be able to actually provide more services now to address that issue. In the last couple of months, our demand has actually shot up, and we're now seeing over 300 psychology sessions a month, and that's a lot considering the size of the organisation we are. And we know that there are more people now after this announcement who will put their hand up to gain the support of Fortem and the work that we are doing.
I know especially the regional areas of Australia, they sort of have those problems that we're seeing across the country, like you mentioned, floods, fire, COVID has been a big thing, but probably less support out in those areas. What's this going to allow to sort of expand that service to those areas?
Look, regional and rural Australia always had an issue with accessing good mental health services, especially mental health services that are tailored in any way to the requirements of that organisation. So for our first responders, you're lucky if you can actually gain any mental health support at all in some of these locations where they work, and especially mental health support that is dedicated to support you and your unique situation and your family's unique situation. So this funding will allow us to actually deliver more of that mental health support tailored, independent of the agencies, to those individuals who are seeing some pretty horrible things right now, have seen some things over their careers which was definitely involved trauma to them, and also follow-on trauma to their families, and we can now provide more support to them, which is just fantastic.
I know there's been talk about, there are services out there available to these first responders, but Fortem obviously offering something that complements those services and also supports the family members of the first responders as well as the first responder themselves.
Look, to be frank, there isn't a lot of support out there for first responders and their families. There needs to be more. There is some provided by the agencies, which is fantastic, but often people want to talk to the agency about some things related to potentially their work stresses, but not necessarily the traumas that they've been through. They want something independent, and their families want something independent that's not connected to the workplace. And there is no other independent organisation in the country in regional, rural locations. And I think it's a point to stress is that we are on the ground. This is not purely through telehealth. We are actually embedding psychologists in local, regional and rural areas, and there is nothing like that. So to say there are support services out there is categorically wrong, because there isn't, providing the services that we do in an independent fashion for families and for those first responders who need us.
And just lastly, as a not-for-profit organisation, I imagine support like this from federal government in particular is so vital. Had the support in establishing Fortem from the previous government, and to see the new Albanese government come on board and continue that support must be a really good thing to see from an organisational perspective.
Look, it really is, and we've been really lucky to have support from both sides of the aisle and across all different organisations. I think people understand finally the importance of supporting first responders. We've seen so much emphasis and energy and funds put into the support of veterans, and today being Remembrance Day, it's clear that there needs to be more. And the point where we're at now, though, as a country, is we're really starting to take seriously the support of veterans, and that's great. But for our emergency services, our frontline policing and first responders in general, we just haven't invested that as a country. So to have the government now commit to that, and to commit to putting more funds forward through a number of other different mechanisms is just fantastic for first responders and their family, and we're proud to be a part of that.